Chairman Sisodia Sahib, Honorable Deputy CM. I have no words to express my gratitude to you. It's an honor, sirs, to be invited under the auspices of the Delhi Legislative Assembly and function graced by people of high distinction to my right and to my left, and to invited to speak on a topic like Bhagat Singh. When I wrote this book, it was launched by Harkishan Singh Surjit, and a diplomat present there asked me, "Tell me, Mr. Noorani, why have you written this book? This is way out of the subject you write on." I said, "I'll explain to you this," and I did that in my speech. I called the subtitle Politics of Justice. It is the abuse of courts for political ends. As Maulana Azad said when he was imprisoned and detained for sedition, he said, "Mr. Magistrate, there is no penalty that you can give me which will be equal to my crime. Let me tell you that throughout history, the courts have been the greatest venue of injustice. In the hands of a just ruler, the courtroom becomes an instrument of justice. But when the rulers are unjust, there is no instrument more fitting. Here stood Jesus Christ. Here stood Socrates, Florence Nightingale, Galileo, every lover of liberty, every seeker after truth." That is one reason. But I never realized that Bhagat Singh would be so relevant today. Let me explain to you why. You know, we honor martyrs, but Bhagat Singh should be honored and remembered because he was the prince among the people, and he was an intellectual and a rare, honest and upright intellectual. At the time when Savarkar is being honored, I say honored by some, but I have, in my last issue of Frontline, tabulated 6 apologies, 4 to the British government within months of his landing in Andamans. He was put in the Andamans in 1911. Before the year I was out, he wrote an abject apology, and the British rulers made him 4 men. 3 of most apologies have followed. The 5th apology was in 1948 to the Commissioner of Police with an undertaking. By the way, each apology with an undertaking. And the last apology was in 1950. If this was his record, what was Bhagat Singh? He wrote a letter to his father, "Forgive me if I'm violating the rules of etiquette, but father, you had no right to ask these people for any concession for me. I'm going to die and I'll face death." Till the end, he discouraged any pleas on his behalf. He was a man who loved Lala Lajpat Rai. But when the Lala became communal-minded, Bhagat Singh broke with him. And yet, he attacked the police officer because he thought it was this police officer who had broken his head, the head of Lala Lajpat Rai, with a stick, as a result of which Lalaji died. Lalaji deserves to be honored. Lalaji was a great first-rate mind and a man of character. Bhagat Singh gave his life for it, and yet during his lifetime, when Lala... Today, by the way, I wonder how many of you have followed that in Pakistan, in Lahore, there's a Bhagat Singh society. And in that repressive atmosphere there, with the mullahs and all that, people are struggling to have a memorial for Bhagat Singh. I'll explain to you why I believe that he is relevant. He is relevant because he resisted injustice. He resisted falsehood. हवा को पीठ नहीं देता है जनाब, हवा का सामना करते हैं. संघर्ष करते हैं. This was his message, and it is no use floral tributes and that kind as a martyr along with other martyrs. Bhagat Singh is alive in that sense because his legacy is with us. His notebooks are with us. In the notebooks, you'll find tributes to Patrick Henry, Bertrand Russell, Upton Sinclair, and he called him an important idealist. Robert Ingersoll, Mark Twain, Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto, Laws of England by Blackstone. This was a man who had a vision for India. And according to Williamson, the director of Intelligence Bureau, there was a moment in our times when his popularity excelled that of Gandhi. He was fearless, but he was against suicide. He wrote to a colleague, suicide is a cowardly thing. Don't commit suicide. The other thing is that the Lahore bar rallied round him. And when there was an ordinance enacted, the entire Lahore bar set up a legal committee to examine its validity. And one of the signatories to that report was Allama Iqbal, one of the greatest poets of the subcontinent. Another was Muslim Leaguers, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, all united. That was the secular ideal at its best. The trial was a farce. I'll explain to you why. He was sentenced to death by a tribunal which was itself under a sentence of death. He hated terrorism. He took up the gun of necessity. And I regret to say, let me jump at this. He could have got away after murdering Sanders. He thought that Sanders was the officer who had attacked Lajpat Rai. But Sanders was not. Sanders was just as young as they. After that, he fled, and there was no trace of him. Then Sukhdev instigated him. Let's throw a bomb in the Central Assembly Hall. And when he threw the bomb, it is admitted, here again there was a farcical trial, it was admitted that it was a controlled explosion designed to inflict no harm on persons, throw it on vacant space, and so that nobody is killed. It was, object was much. Remember, this was a young man of 23. British repression was at its height. And as Jawaharlal Nehru said, it is easy to condemn people who did that. It was said by one of his colleagues that you couldn't see Bhagat Singh without a load of books on his hands. He loved books. After throwing the bomb, he didn't attempt to escape. He surrendered himself. Only two persons were injured, Sir George Schuster and Baljor Dalal. Sir Sobha Singh, Khushan Singh's father, escorted the police to where Bhagat Singh was, and he yielded to his arrest. He was tried, and there was a brilliant defense mounted by his counsel, Asif Ali. It was brilliant. But of course, it was in open daylight. But he showed that the charge of attempted murder was dishonest. You see, the British were out to kill him. There's no other explanation. There was a second Lahore conspiracy case where all the safeguards were given. They were denied to Bhagat Singh because the Viceroy wanted him dead. So I want to explain to you Bhagat Singh's outlook rather. This is what he said about the bomb as well as terrorism. He said, our party should have a military wing. Let me make it clear. It is said that I'm a terrorist, But in reality, I have all along been a revolutionary with definite ideals. It is my considered opinion that bombs cannot serve any purpose. This was after it, had he lived, he would have matured into a balanced politician with revolutionary zeal intact. But he had realized that the violence alone did not pay. And I'll explain to you towards the end the difference between him and the modern terrorist. I then come to the magisterial trial. At the magisterial trial, this atmosphere was such. He was handcuffed. They went to hunger strike. And among the books he wrote, which he asked for, was biography of Napoleon. He was a serious student of history. The proceedings began and he was committed to Sessions Court. He was so honest and fair that he paid a tribute to the magistrate. Sir, you have been very polite to us. At the trial, the legal issue arose. Is it possible to try somebody who refuses to speak at all? That is called mute of malice, and it was derived from the Irish revolutionaries. There was one Irish revolutionary who died during this trial, and that proved an example. And I'm afraid the same thing happened with one of the accused, and that shook the whole country. Bhagat Singh and others went on a hunger strike only because they were maltreated. They are maltreated. The prosecutor was one garden node, and the Bhagat Singh and others, you would ridicule him as garden toad. So this went on. The assessors were all divided. Approvers had turned hostile. And among the 7 approvers, 3 belonged to the Communist Party. Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose, Kidwai, K.F. Nariman, all went to visit them. These are the only top leaders who went. Mohanlal Saxena also. The trial by the magistrate ended with a committal, but the problem was, under the Criminal Procedure Code, you couldn't try people in their absence. And what would happen if these people refused to come to court at all? So there was a debate in the Central Assembly. Motilal Nehru, others led the thing. Jinnah fought for Bhagat Singh, and he told the Home Minister, Emerson, the man who goes on a hunger strike, by the way, that would apply also to Gandhi. Jinnah said that the man who goes in the hunger strike is a man with a soul. He believes in some ideals and is prepared to die for them. I asked the Home Minister, you go on a hunger strike. And the atmosphere was electrified. The proceedings were well covered by the Tribune of Lahore. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, one of the persons died as a result of the hunger strike. That was Jatindranath. So the Viceroy knew that if I do go to the Sessions Court, proceedings might be prolonged. So he wanted to kill him. And he knew also in the Central Assembly, the nationalists, the anti-British, had a majority. Vitramai Patel was in the chair as a speaker. So he did a vicious thing. Under the old Government of India Act of 1919, there were 2 kinds of ordinances. Incidentally, the ordinance power under our Constitution is a relic of the British Raj. You will not find it in any other democracy. Britain, Canada, Australia, South Africa, United States. What they do if there's an emergency is summon Parliament. Even in those days, people could have been summoned. Now, under the Government of India Act 1919, there were 2 kinds of ordinance. One required ratification by the Central Assembly to be enacted as Act. The other required the Governor General's own fatwa. It became law. But with the proviso, it couldn't go beyond 6 months. So they set up a tribunal which was under a sentence of death. Imagine the mentality of the judges who would have to proceed with trial headlong through all norms of justice, speed up things, speedy justice, and deliver a verdict. Now, what happened in between this? Among the three judges was Justice Agha Haider of Saharanpur. First, he gave an order. I dissociate myself. On one occasion, Bhagat Singh was brutally treated by the police. So the Justice Agha Haider gave a written order. I wish to dissociate myself from the treatment and the order given by the tribunal, and this is a written order. That was not all. Throughout the proceedings, Justice Agha Haider would mercilessly cross-examine the witnesses. At this point, it has emerged later on, and I have mentioned it, the correspondent of Indian Express went and met Agha Haider's relations in Saharanpur. They said the Chief Justice came to Justice Agha Haider and tried to pacify him. But he was too honest and he said, this is another thing that happened. Do you know what was done? One fine day, Tribune reported that the tribunal has been reconstituted. Agha Haider was dropped, and so was the British president. Now, the British president had to go to England, but the real motive was to drop Agha Haider. You know why? Because if there was a 2-1 verdict, you couldn't imprison him. The British were better than Ziaul Haq, who sent Bhutto to gallows on a verdict of 5-4 of the Supreme Court. But the British realized that they were answerable to the House of Commons. They were answerable to world. So, Agha Haider had to be removed. The proceedings went on, and yet comes another thing. None of the witnesses could identify Bhagat Singh, none. Except one, what we lawyers call chance witness. One Abdullah, who said, I was driving the car, he had to answer a call of nature. He came out and he's here. But his evidence was so full of contradictions that when skillful defense, and this is my complaint in the book I'm making here, the Indian bar had turned its back on him. Where were the Saprus and the Jaikars and all the others doing? What is the Bombay bar doing? What is the Calcutta bar doing? They were powerful bars. They were not like the bars of today, I regret to say. Calcutta bars had one lawyer of standing, good cross-examiner, come. Bhagat Singh would have been acquitted. You could not have sentenced the man to death on that evidence. On the evidence of a man who just happened to come by, and even his evidence was there. The result was, he was sentenced. Now, what is the attitude? Bhagat Singh said, I don't want any defense lawyer. But I want a lawyer as a legal advisor. That was arranged off and on. Justice Jivanlal Kapoor of the Supreme Court of India was one of the leaders of the Lahore bar later on, but he took interest. Often, and the lawyers who came obviously were not paid. They would come and go, come and go. There was no proper defense. The result was they were sentenced to death. Here comes another thing. After the case was over, every person sentenced to death is given a copy of the judgment free of cost. Sukhdev's copy, belonging to his lawyer, has his comments on the margin. Now remember, this is the man who was facing death. He knew it would be executed. And the marginal comments are truthful. They show the dishonest portions of the report, they expose them thoroughly. At this point, I'll pause and make a request to the Honorable Chief Minister, Shri Kejriwal. Sir, I have mentioned in the book, and I'll give the references, all the proceedings are available at one Janpat next to a Meridian Hotel, National Archives. I request the Deputy Government, sir, publish them under the auspices of the Government of Delhi. Publish the proceedings of the bomb case, Magistrates Court, the tribunal, and other related material. And as far as I'm concerned, I won't take a rupee, but you have my services for free. I'll be very happy to help you collect them and bring it out today. But those proceedings need to be brought out under your auspices and sold, English as well as Hindi translation. First, launch the English and entire proceedings in one volume. The bomb case separate, this tribunal separate. Complete proceedings. But the other thing is, the Honorable Speaker just told me that Bhagat Singh's diary is available. That should deserve to be. There is no copyright in that because it's past copyright. The Delhi government can publish that diary. The diary contains his, apart from the sanctity of his own handwriting, contains his thoughts. The thoughts range from any number of issues. He wrote on what is on communalism. He wrote on the Punjab and language question. He wrote on his religious beliefs. All this. Now, the judgment is so dishonest. The judge did not refer to him as accused, murderers. Can you imagine such language by an English judge? Never happened before. Tilak was treated well. All the others are treated well. Aurobindo Ghosh was treated well. Our judges, being, I won't say servile, but they emulated the majority judgment. And today, there is egg on their face because even the British said that this is bad law. And one leading council on human rights, Lord Lester, told me, Mr. Noorani, it's funny, in your country, you follow English rulings which are outdated even in England. But this was the... Anyway, the case went to the Privy Council on the interpretation. D. and Pitt argued, and the Privy Council was also managed. I've traced some of the letters that passed in between, that, Lowndes was there, and this was it. If you read that ordinance, it is worse, it is much better than our TADA, Preventive Detention Act, National Security Act. The British would have been appalled and repelled by the kind of statutes. By the way, Rowlatt Act was a disgrace. But let me tell you, in the Rowlatt report, it says that if in the supreme interest of the state, persons have been detained without trial, it should be in a house, in an asylum, other than prison. This is the scandalous part of our preventive detention laws, and therein lies the significance of Bhagat Singh's fight for liberty. Under the Indian Penal Code, imprisonment is a form of punishment. Our Supreme Court has held that the detainee is not a convict. So why do you lodge him in prison? Because every preventive detention law, but TADA also says, the government may make rules to provide for the conditions of detention. And by the rule-making power, imprisonment is provided. When I was in jail, I saw that I was put in a prison like any other detainee. I saw that the CPM leaders, other people, political, were in jail. To this day, I have written repeatedly on this, but nobody has picked it up. And let me tell you, I felt that at that time, given the climate of opinion sometimes, I didn't expect there must be very rare judges who would uphold it. Because as an English American humorist friend said, whether the Constitution follows the flag or not, the Supreme Court follows the election returns. And that happened in the Kissa Kusiga case, which Jetmalani fought. The trial court sentenced Sanjay Gandhi and V.C. Shukla. When the appeal came up before the Supreme Court, Mrs. Indira Gandhi had returned to power. Jetmalani was dropped as a prosecutor. A state-nominated prosecutor came. He wound up the proceeding, his arguments in a short time. And the two judges, before that, Justice Krishna Iyer had pursued the matter, laid down the schedule because of the disorderly behavior of Sanjay Gandhi and others. And as a result of that, the trial proceeded. Now, there's a complete difference in the judges after seeing Indira Gandhi's, and they gave a shoddy judgment. I'm sorry to say that about myself, but I might mention that I wrote an article attacking the Supreme Court judgment while Sanjay Gandhi was still alive. Point I'm making is that no matter what laws you have, no matter what opinion you hold, as Justice Cardozo said, in the final analysis, the only guarantee of liberty is the personality of the judge. And apart from Bhagat Singh's relevance for his ideology and sacrifice, is the fact that the trial proceedings shows that Maulana Azad was right. In the hands of an unjust world, Agha Haidars would be removed and the kind of judgment that was delivered would be delivered here. The answer to this is public opinion against those subservient judges, public opinion to bolster up the lawyers, and unless public opinion stirs up and puts spine in the back of the judges, there will be no hope. But there is hope in our country because our civil society is assertive, and I hope the civil society will always remain assertive and follow the example set by Shahid Bhagat Singh. Thank you.